Information, visit them on the web at tbfirm.com or give them a call at 630-526-4242. Welcome to WRMN's special edition show here today. As we are hosting a forum, it is a Kane County Board District 20 candidate panel, and we've got some great candidates in here today to talk to you. I am Mark Bialek. I am one of the hosts of the panel today, but not the main guy. We're going to have several different important people here that make many important decisions in Kane County in the room this hour. We start with Silvia Schrage, who's running for Kane County Board District 20, and Andrew Sosnowski, who's running for Kane County State's Attorney. And welcome to the show. Welcome to the studio. And Silvia, this is something that you put together because you want to educate the public to a lot of things that some of our local officials do, right?
Yes.
Well, welcome. I appreciate you putting this show together today.
Thank you very much. And this show is basically comes to fruition from my experience as an interpreter for many years, dealing between the providers and the patients, or just clients and providers of any, perhaps professionals of any kind. And, professionals, they know their lingo, they know their profession, and they sometimes talk amongst themselves and don't connect with the other side.
Right.
And so I've been walking the streets and talking to people about their concerns. And a lot of the stuff people bring up to me is really city level, is not really county level. And so safety is a big topic that comes up. And a lot of these things are really more for the police department than for the county, but we have people that they have to choose in the election at the county level.
Yeah.
So we have the state attorney and we have the coroner.
Well, I give you kudos because you wanted to bring some people in here together today. You're walking the streets, you're talking to people, and you're trying to find out the answers for questions that they want to know, right? And you're doing it by putting a panel together today and bringing them all in, which is really nice. I think it's a great thing you're doing this. And you're running for Kane County District 20 for the board coming up. And so, Yeah, and to not even talk over people when I say District 20, we should explain where that is. And that's basically from I-90 south towards basically Chicago Avenue. On the east side, it goes down to Laurel and then goes up to Division, crosses the river all the way to McLean, and then goes up to Wing Street and to Wing Park Boulevard. Okay.
So basically both sides of the river, and you have seen, a lot of people have seen my signs out there that have the map with the river in the middle.
Yeah.
So that's my district. And in this hour, we're going to talk about how does the state attorney and how do the coroner relate to people right here.
Okay, that sounds great. So first of all, we have Andrew Sosnowski in, Kane County State's Attorney, and he's been in here, or he's running for that, and he's been in here before. Then we're going to bring in Coroner Rob Russell with Dr. Robert Renteria in the second half hour of the show. So welcome to the show, Drew.
Well, thank you very much, Marky B, and thank you very much, Sylvia. What a tremendous idea, by the way. It shows how you're going to be as a board member, to bring people together, to explain things, and to let the community know. It's all about the community. It's not about us. It's about our community.
Very well, thank you. That is true. I mean, we are running for office to be elected by the people, and we should be by the people, for the people.
Amen.
And so we want to know, how are you going to be for the people here of District 20? To understand that, we need to understand really what is the state attorney, what is that position? Explain to us a little bit what is the role of the state's attorney?
Yeah.
Well, very good. Well, first of all, there are 102 state's attorneys in Illinois because there's 102 counties in Illinois. The state's attorney represents individual counties. So I'm running to represent Kane County, our home right here where we are at WRMN in Elgin. And we go from Aurora all the way up to Algonquin and east and west as well. The state's attorney is given their authority by statute. So it's in the laws. It's written in there. And we're the prosecutorial body. So that means when somebody gets arrested and somebody gets charged with a criminal offense, the state's attorney would be the one that would determine the prosecution of that case. We would put on evidence to show the person is either guilty or not guilty, and there would be a defense attorney that would actually represent the defendant, and then there'd be a judge to make decisions. So that's a simple way of putting it. There's a lot more complexities to that, but I think for purposes of this discussion, that probably is a good high end to start.
Okay, so you mentioned the judge, the defense attorney, and the prosecutor. Now, when people complain, if there's been not enough prosecutions, more prosecutions, less prosecutions, how does the caliber of the prosecutor affect this? And also, I guess a very topical thing is that Safety Act that has been passed. And how would you explain the role that has had and the impact it has had on prosecutions at our level?
Absolutely. Thank you for those questions. Well, the person who's prosecuting the case is extremely important. You are giving me, if you elect me, the discretion to determine how to keep our community safe. I mean, it's as simple as that. What kind of criminal activities are we going to make sure we emphasize and make sure people don't do again? So as you look at the cases, you're going to look at penalties that are associated with the cases. And the more egregious those penalties are, and the more egregious the crimes are, the more effective they may become. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to mitigate crime, and we're trying to make sure people don't do it again. Just like when we're parents, when a kid does something wrong, we punish them and we hope they don't do it again. It's very similar in the criminal justice system like that.
Attorney, I have a question for you.
Sure.
On behalf of the people, could you say, use a different word than egregious?
Sure. Well, egregious means that it's very, very important or very, that's a good question. Egregious means very important, high level. High level importance. And anybody who has a dictionary at home, please look it up and you can call in. But it's a high level, so it's the worst of the worst.
Okay.
So when you're talking about egregiousness as far as a crime, you're looking at murders and rapes and things that we look at as very bad.
Okay.
And so then you mentioned also the Safety Act. The Safety Act has been a recent legislation. In 2021, it came to effect. There's many different spider webs to that legislation. A lot of things are about controlling our police, really, is what it is, and putting more parameters around police. One of those Safety Act codicils, if you will, is the Pretrial Fairness Act, which talks about catching individuals and releasing them, is basically what people have called it. And that's when you give persons who are charged with a crime, they get to no bond anymore. So there's no cash bail in Illinois. We're the only state in the whole country out of the 50 states that has the Safety Act, which has something that says that no criminal anymore, nobody who's charged with a crime, I should say, is allowed to be held on a bond. We don't have any bond anymore in Illinois. Now, in my position here, I think it's a bad law. It meant well. We started with trying to protect against racism, which we need to do. Okay. But how I protect against racism is you call it out. I've not seen racism in Kane County like they may see in Cook County. The Safety Act is really a Cook County law. It should be there. It shouldn't be in Kane County. It really doesn't protect us. As a matter of fact, what's ended up happening is it's starting to have the reverse effect. People are getting arrested, they're getting released, they're getting on charges, they're getting on conditions, I should say, and they're going right back out into the community. I've heard situations where people get arrested one day and the next day they're walking in the neighborhood and people are saying, what happened? Why do I even report a crime? Nothing is going on. That's the kind of thing, the descent into problematic behavior.
Okay, so going back, you've said a lot there. When you say that there's no bond, explain again, how did it used to be to understand the difference with now?
Sure. Well, before we used to have cash bail in Illinois. And it's the same way in the United States of America. All 50 states have cash bail. That means this: when you get charged, you go to court and you get a bond that's set. It's an amount of money that you have to post in order to get out. They were saying that the Safety Act said, well, what happens, that's inherently unfair because certain people can't afford the actual money to get out. But what I submit to your listeners here is that never happened in Kane County. I was a prosecutor for many years and also a defense attorney. And when somebody gets charged, if they can't post the bail amount, that's good things sometimes. They end up staying in jail for a couple days. It's good sometimes for detox. It's good to have them wraparound services and to get them into the community services like you're going to talk about with Coroner Russell and Rob Renteria. You know, it allows them to get settled in. And a lot of these people are involved with drug activities. They're involved maybe in homeless situations. It's allowing us to do that, and it happened. And then what would happen immediately is they get a lawyer. When you get a lawyer by the Constitution, the lawyer now represents that individual, and they were often going into the jails, not often, all the time, going into the jails, meeting with their clients, coming back to me as a prosecutor, or me as a defense attorney going to the prosecutor, and working some of these cases out. And now the people get a punishment. They get their chance to have rehabilitation or any types of things that the system can work, and they go back out now on the street. Now they have a conviction or they have something that holds teeth. In the process now, they get released, and if they commit another violation of their probation or their bond terms, or I should say their pretrial release terms, they go right back out into the community, and there's no way they get summons back to court. It goes back and forth, back and forth. Lots of money being wasted by the taxpayers, from the taxpayers.
So when you said, I just want to clarify again, when you said that now they get punished, so in the old case with a cash and bail, when there was a waiting period, there was a time for services then to be offered.
Yes.
And things to, in that case, not now, is when people would walk out and have some referral to some rehab or whatever. And so are you saying that in the current situation, there is less of those referrals being given?
There are referrals, but what happens is just like anything, somebody gets released, that's the first thing they want to do. They want to walk out, and follow-up is very difficult. We're finding that people who are released without really some kind of a punishment aspect to it don't follow up with the referrals. When a person was kept in jail for a couple days, maybe 2, 3, 4, sometimes a week, it would force them to make these referrals. It would force them to get involved with things that are going to help their behavior change. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to help behavior change. It doesn't necessarily mean we got to punish them with the worst possible penalties, but we don't want them coming out into the community and doing it again. Your neighbors, your friends, your constituents deserve better than that.
Okay, very good. So some of the other questions, I had a lot of questions from people and comments on safety that had really not to do with criminal activity, but more with speeding. Mm-hmm. A lot of reckless driving, and there's other things that seem local. So I would ask you to explain to us, what is the role of the local police being in Elgin District 20? At what point does safety depend only on the police department here? And at what point does the police department and Elgin refer to the state attorney?
Okay, well, that's a very good question. There's several of them there, and let me see if I can peel it back. First of all, your constituents, the people who you're speaking with, are extremely lucky to live in Elgin. We have an amazing police department. You can see them at community events. They're involved. Chief Lally, who often speaks here at WRMN, and takes the time to come and talk to the constituents weekly, I think. It's a testament to how the police department is trying to really become part of the community. When the police department becomes part of the community, there's more trust. And what I would say to your listeners and also your constituents is the more they're involved with the police and the more they talk with them and interact, the better they're going to be. They're better off they're going to be. Now, let's talk a little bit about their jurisdiction. So the law enforcement, the Elgin Police Department has jurisdiction to actually investigate and arrest people for criminal activity that take place right here in Elgin. And when they're arrested, if they are arrested, and they are charged with a criminal offense, that's a state offense, like a misdemeanor normally, if you look at it, or above, those are the ones we look at, felonies, they would be referred to the state's attorney's office, and then the state's attorney would take it from there and prosecute these individuals. That means prove them guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, or if they can't, they're not guilty and they get released. So that's the process that we have. When you talk about traffic tickets, still some traffic tickets end up in state court, but many of them end up with ordinance violations or something where they're being prosecuted by a city prosecutor. Now, in Elgin, we have a city prosecutor. It's Steve Towsey is his name. Very good man. I've known him for probably 35 years. And he does the city tickets. So one of the things your listeners would want to know and your constituents is to look at the top of the ticket to see if it's a city ticket or it's a state ticket. If it's a state ticket, you'll have me as your prosecutor. If it's a city ticket, you'll have the city prosecutor.
And the same police department can choose which one to write.
Exactly.
They have that discretion.
They have the discretion to write an ordinance, and because oftentimes the ordinances reflect the same as the statutes themselves, the state statutes. Sometimes it's also, to get rid of the state, the state sometimes going to another courthouse or something. They're trying to work with the citizens here to keep them in their local. And if in local areas, the city prosecutor only appears here in Elgin Branch Court, where Branch Court, right down the street from here. And it makes it a lot more convenient. Also, if there's fines or anything like that, those fines get put right back into our community so that we can serve our community. A lot of those things go right back to pay the law enforcement, to pay community service. And any of those fees, if there are any kind of court costs or anything, would go right back into our community. So they try to do those in ways that are more responsible.
Okay. But there were some cases that you mentioned when I was asking you before this going live here, that there might be cases where it has to do with it's more aggravated, some details about the offense. So it says reckless driving, and in addition to that, they ran over a person or they did some damage to property. Is it a value, the dollar value of the damage?
No, it's not the
made,
dollar
or-
value. It's the type of charge itself. So certain charges themselves are automatic state charges. The way I can explain it the best is if they're misdemeanors or above normally, and that's not all cases. So please, if anybody's listening who's a lawyer or has some legal background, they're going to say that's wrong. Well, it's not all, but that's the conduit which I'm going to use here so that your listeners may understand. Misdemeanors are anything that's punishable by a year in jail or less. That doesn't mean everybody's going to get a year in jail, but it means that these are crimes that are much less. They'll never go to prison. And then the felony cases where they go to prison, those will always be in state court. And not everybody who's charged with a felony goes to prison. Only high level ones. Again, the egregious ones, the high level, the most difficult cases, the most horrendous cases will get there. And those are class X felonies, and then they have to go to prison.
Okay, so then other two, I'm just doing the interpreter job here, but jail versus prison.
Sure.
So where do we go?
That's a very,
What
very
are the
good thing.
places we have?
That's an excellent question.
It is,
so
yeah.
if a person is arrested, they will be brought to the lockup here in Elgin, if it happens in Elgin. And they'll stay there. Sometimes they stay there and they're just released right from there. They don't even go into the jail. They're just processed and then released. If there's a reason to keep them in custody, they may stay a night in the Elgin jail, which is a municipal jail, and then they're transferred to the Kane County Correctional Facility, which is the Kane County Jail. The Kane County Jail is run by the sheriff, so they have jurisdiction over that, and that's Kane County, which would be a county jail. DuPage has their own jail. Cook County has their own jail. If you go out further west, some of them share jails because they just don't have the funding for it because it's expensive, the building itself and also maintaining it. So anybody who is charged with a jailable offense would go to the county. And also sometimes if you're charged with a felony offense, you start there in jail. So let's say they don't get a released on conditions by the Pretrial Fairness Act and they're held in there until their trial. Then they get held in the jail until trial. If they get convicted and it's a felony, now they go to prison. Now it's transferred. So the prison are the ones, they don't hold people. Those are the ones where they get sentenced, and they're for felonies and above. So it has to be either a class 4, 3, 2, 1 X felony. And I know that that's language your folks don't know, but the smaller ones are 4, then 3, then 2, then 1, then X. We even have super X's, which are murders that are more horrendous than the other ones, and that's how the system works.
Okay.
So jail is local, like you have a local lockup here in Elgin. Then you have the county jail, which is for ones that oftentimes those are people waiting for trial. So if they get held or they get sentenced for a misdemeanor, they stay in the jail. And then if they get sentenced to prison, they go to the prison.
Okay.
And there's many of those in the state of Illinois. It just depends on what kind of charges they have. Some of them are really bad people, and they get the most horrendous or the most difficult jails, like Menard. I think Menard, they might be closing that.
So one last question.
Sure.
I think we're running close to wrapping it
Yeah.
up here. So when it comes to who reports to the state attorneys, so how many, so you say there's 112, 20?
102.
102, sorry, there's a 2 in there. 102 states attorneys, and then there's people who report to you, there's assistant state attorneys. So how many people report to the state attorney here in Kane County?
Okay, let me back up one little thing here. First of all, the state's attorney answers to the people. We don't have a boss per se. Yes, we do have a boss. They're the people of the state of Illinois. So when I get elected by the grace of God, if that happens, all you are my bosses, the people of the state of Illinois. And those people will determine that. Then they elect me, and then I can run my office. And I run my office how the people see fit. So I want to prosecute crime. So I have to ask for a budget, and then the budget would be approved by the county board, and I use that budget to hire individuals to do the things that I think are important for the community to keep it safe. So right now, I know there's been a tremendous amount of money that's been used by my opponent. This is not a political conversation, but I think my opponent has said the budget started when she was there 3 years ago with $10 million. Now it's $18 million. So they've spent $8 million more in the last year. And also violent crime has increased in Kane County, according to her, during this time. These are my opponent's words, not mine. So the question becomes, why are we spending $8 million more for less safety in our community? So what I'd have to do is look to see where things are happening and how to delegate that monies to make sure that we're protected. That's what we're all about.
So if the county board is the one who approves your budget, does it ever happen that the county board says, wait a second, this is outrageous, this is too much, and you have to go back to the drawing board and modify your budget?
Absolutely, and they should. That's called responsible government. So when a state's attorney like my opponent asks for $8 million, it's up to the board to say, wait a minute, let's be more responsible about it. We never want to affect public safety. That's number one. But there are ways to mitigate public safety and make it better without spending a lot of money.
One of the people that I talked to when I was running said that I don't know if I'm quoting this correctly, but there was, whether it is with the state's attorney's office or in some other similar position, he was saying that sometimes there's people doing administrative things that have certain credentials, and then they're just like filling in, data.
That's what's called bureaucracy.
Yeah. So perhaps somebody could be hired with less credentials to do that and not be some deputy sheriff or deputy this or deputy that. And then that would be a way of saving where you had the same task done, but by somebody who's just crunching the numbers.
Yeah. And I've heard that same thing, Sylvia. I've heard that the state's attorneys is bloated right now. There's a lot of supervisors. Everybody wants to be the boss. But you need people just doing the work. Roll up your sleeves and do that. And if people believe in public safety, which is the people you want to attract, then they will work in that office to keep our streets safe, our communities safe, and that's what we need to do. So I thank you again. I know we're running to the end here, but I want to say something to you. Muchas gracias, señora, por me aquí. Mi español es muy mal, pero mi práctico español todos los días. Lo siento, es mal. So for your listeners, I know Silvia speaks Spanish. I try my best, but that's how you connect with your community. Learn about your community, learn their language, understand your neighbor. If we start understanding our neighbor and loving our neighbor, really, we'll have less crime.
Si ustedes tienen alguna pregunta para hacer al candidato, pueden referirse a él, mandarle a su página de web directamente, que va a estar al pie de nuestro programa, o también pueden dirigirse a mí para que yo le dirija las preguntas a él, pero definitivamente queremos que estén informados, y si no contestamos nada aquí, no está en español esto, pero pueden dirigirse a mí o al candidato para que le contestemos en español. Muchas gracias. I'm offering people that if they need to hear any of these questions, that have questions for this candidate in Spanish, they can address him directly going to his website that you're putting at the bottom right, or they can come to my website and email me, and then I'll direct it to him.
And I'd love it because I could practice my Spanish then.
Okay, very good.
It's SylviaForKane.com, and it's SosnowskiForKane.com, the word for spelled out in both websites, and Silvia spelled Silvia for Kane, and Sosnowski is Sosnowski for Kane. And this is the WRMN's Kane County District 20 panel discussion this hour, about halfway through. We're joined by Silvia Schrage, Kane County Board District 20 candidate. Andrew's been our guest in the first part. Thank you, Andrew.
Yes, my pleasure. Thank you all. Thank you, Marky B. Thank you, Sylvia.
Thank you very much.
Running for Kane County State's Attorney. Coming up next, we're going to have Rob Russell in and Dr. Robert Renteria. Keep it right here on WRMN.
With your 1410 WRMN News Flash, I'm Sean Kernan. Brought to you by Cintas. Nightmare on Chicago Street is returning to Elgin on October 19th, and now they've put tickets on sale on the City of Elgin social media. You can go to nightmareonchicagostreet.com to buy your tickets. The DuPage County Health Department is urging residents to get vaccinated against COVID-19, RSV, and the flu. Health officials highlighting the importance of immunizations, especially for high-risk groups such as pregnant individuals, to prevent severe illnesses and protect newborns. Governor J.B. Pritzker declaring the month of October Breast Cancer Awareness Month in the state of Illinois, highlighting the critical importance of early detection. Illinois residents are encouraged to utilize resources like the Illinois Breast and Cervical Cancer Program, which offers free mammograms and screenings, especially for uninsured or underinsured individuals. With your 1410 WRMN News Flash, I'm Sean Kernan.
Whether you own a local business or a global one, you know that these days, generating growth is a challenge. By teaming with Bank of America, you'll not just stay ahead of the curve, you'll move it. With access to experts, award-winning insights, and business solutions so powerful, you'll make every move matter, locally and globally. Visit bankofamerica.com/banking for business to learn more. What would you like the power to do? Copyright 2024 Bank of America N.A.
Progressive knows finding your new home was a dream come true. You wanted a walk-up with central air and a skylight, and you found it. Now, every Friday night, you get to fall asleep to the sound of your downstairs neighbors' dance parties. Progressive can't save you from your noisy neighbors, but we can save you money when you bundle your home and auto with us. Get a quote at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company, affiliates, and other insurers not available in all states.
Hey there, this is Marky B from The First Shift, inviting you to join Brian Anderson for his new radio show, Kane County Speaks, every Thursday from 9 until 10 a.m. during the final hour of my morning show. It's an election year, and Brian will discuss important local issues and interview local candidates from the perspective of Kane County Speaks. The show will feature open phone lines for your thoughts, comments, and questions, and the chat room will be open at WRMN Radio on YouTube. Kane County Speaks is citizen-driven and focused on making Kane County a better place to live and work with goals of freedom, security, and prosperity for all. To learn more about their grassroots organization, you can check them out at KaneCountySpeaks.com. Let's discuss the issues of Kane County so that you can get involved and make a difference too. It's Kane County Speaks every Thursday morning with Brian Anderson from 9 until 10 a.m. during the first shift right here on WRMN, AM 1410, and at WRMN Radio on YouTube.
Crime is up in Illinois, and I'm not sitting back to wait and watch dangerous, radical left policies destroy Kane County. I'm Andrew Sosnowski. I have over 35 years of experience with prosecutions of crime, advocating for victims and children. I will root out the causes of crime and be the lead county prosecutor who will fight for our freedom, safety, and security. Vote Andrew Sosnowski for Kane County State's Attorney. I'm Andrew Sosnowski, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Sosnowski for Kane Committee.
And our show continues here on this special hour, WRMN's Kane County District 20 panel discussion. Good to hear from Andrew Sosnowski, and Silvia Schrage is leading the discussion today, candidate for Kane County Board District 20. And this time around, Silvia, we have two other great guests for the second half of the show. We have Rob Russell, the Kane County Coroner, along with Dr. Robert Renteria, and they're all a part of this education effort. You're trying to learn, and you're trying to teach some of your constituents too exactly what all these roles are, right?
Yes.
Well, welcome back to the show.
Yes, so as I was saying in the first part of the show, I've been walking our district, District 20, and asking people what their concerns are. And many of these concerns are safety. And we had in the first part of the show, Dr. Sosnowski, I'm sorry, not doctor, we say that in Spanish in Argentina for lawyers, but we had Andrew Sosnowski as candidate for state's attorney. But now, yesterday when I was walking, I asked people, what are some questions I could bring? And the one question that I got yesterday was, my concern is drugs in the schools. And that's why we have here Dr. Renteria to share a little bit of his experience. Why don't you give us a little bit of your background growing up in LA, and how did you end up now in Illinois, having been born and raised in LA, and what brought you here, and what does drugs have to do with it all?
Well, I grew up in poverty, thank you. I was born in the barrio of East Los Angeles, and with no opportunities, no money, growing up through a dysfunctional lifestyle, I landed up getting involved in gangs. And from gangs, it led to drugs. And the drugs were because of the fact that we couldn't get a good job. So we were doing that just to survive. And I made a drug deal that went bad, and I decided to change my life, give my life to Christ. I joined the military, honorably served for over 7 years as a non-commissioned officer. When I got done, I went back to LA, and these guys had elevated their game to dealing heavy drugs. And some of them were killed or doing 25 to life in a penitentiary. So I came here in 1990 to get away and start my life over. And I moved here in 1990. 6 years later, I was vice president of a publicly traded company on the New York Stock Exchange, so I worked hard. And after that, I climbed the ladder of corporate America for 6 years. I started my own business. And then I was minding my own business until I decided I wanted to help some kids, because you have children, teenagers, and adults walking around lost in a culture of darkness. So I said I want to write a book. So my life did a 180 in 2008. Fast forward 18 years later, we're in over 25 countries around the world working with kids.
So 2008 is when you turn around and decide to go from just being a corporate person, a business person, to trying to give back to the community with your books.
Right, bilingual book series and curriculum. A curriculum for schools that we donate at no cost, and a curriculum for the ministries we donate at no cost.
What are the books about? What do they say?
The books are teaching conflict resolution and critical thinking, character development, pride, accomplishment, and self-esteem. So it's helping kids and adults to make a way out of no way, to give them hope.
Do the books share your story?
It's an autobiography, yes.
It's an autobiography. Now, we call you doctor. And I think you told me that this doctorate was given to you by a really interesting university. Tell us, how did that come about?
It was in 2018, I got an email from Mexico City University, Mexico City, UNAM, which is like Harvard, and they wanted to see the curriculum, and they had questions about the body of work we had developed. So then I got nominated and selected. In 2019, I was a recipient of an international honorary doctorate for academics and humanities. And it's important to note there's only 1,130 people in the world that have that doctorate degree. So it's the most prestigious degree in the world.
That doctorate from the UNAM?
Yes.
Only 1,130 people in the whole world have.
Yes.
The UNAM is Universidad Nacional Autónoma de Mexico. It's a very prestigious university, and it's just really amazing that they chose you, and it's quite a treasure for us to have with us somebody who was given such recognition. And so that's a recognition from Mexico, from a university in Mexico, that you are making a difference. How did they hear about you? What difference were you making for them to call you? Because you could write a book, but nobody knows about it.
Well, they said they had heard that I was the first Latino in the world to ever receive 2 national Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. awards. And I was also the first Latino in the world to receive the International Outstanding Humanitarian Award for promoting global peace and education. So they had taken my books to Pakistan, Afghanistan for women in schools. So when they heard that, those 2 main issues, they were curious, so they wanted to see the body of work, and hence I was a recipient of the doctorate degree.
Okay, so explain this a little bit more. The Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Awards. Why 2 different awards? What's the difference?
Well, I'm the first Latino in the world to ever get 2. I have 2 different Dr. Martin Luther King awards from 2 different organizations.
Okay.
And they said it was for my work as a civil rights leader and a Latino voice in educational reform.
Okay. Civil rights leader and a Latino voice in educational reform.
Yes.
Why in educational reform?
Well, I wanted to give our kids an opportunity because they're going to be the future leaders. And because I felt that the institution of education was fractured because they're teaching to test, not teaching to learn, I wanted to develop a program that was going to make our kids leaders, not followers.
Okay. How is it making them leaders and not followers? Could you explain that a little bit?
Well, the system right now is either trying to create robots or puppets or followers. And on my side, I want kids to lead. I don't want them to follow.
How are you teaching them to lead?
Through the message of the book itself, right? Because the kids are living the life today that I lived back then. So it's actually their story. So they're connecting with the story because it is their story. As Latinos, we don't do our laundry in public. We don't tell our secrets. But I laid myself out there naked for the world to see to serve a higher purpose. So I believe that God has put his hands on these books, and he's reaching kids now all around the world.
So when they read this story, they connect with it as their story.
Yes.
But how does it make them leaders?
It helps them to take ownership of their actions, right? And to be accountable and not to be looking for a hand out, but a hand up, right?
Okay. Okay, very good. And then what about this International Humanitarian Awards? Can you tell a little bit more about that?
There's a agency or a group called Central Asia Institute, and they're building schools for women and girls in Pakistan, Afghanistan. And so Greg Mortensen, who was the founder at the time, said he had given my book to his daughter, who was 14. She was being bullied and had self-esteem issues. And he said that book helped to change his daughter's life. And that's how they heard about me.
That is amazing. I mean, that is simply amazing. A girl in, where was she being bullied?
Pakistan, Afghanistan.
In Pakistan and Afghanistan. And reading your book over there. So totally different story, a different culture, you know, a woman, not a man, a girl, not a young boy. And she is touched by your book.
Yeah.
That's simply amazing.
That says a lot. Says a lot about its impact.
Well, I went from being an author to a messenger, I believe.
Yeah, that's simply amazing. Okay, so what would you say? I mean, yesterday the person I was talking to said, you know, the younger children in the family are not getting involved in drugs because they saw, she was basically saying, this is just a very tough life lesson that my son is learning. And she was really so sad about it, but also she seemed to have a lot of hope that the younger ones, just by that reverse example, like a negative role model, then they realize, I don't want to go there. I've seen my older brother suffer. So the 2 younger ones are doing very well. They are able in the same schools to stay out of trouble. But the one who got in trouble, and it started in high school 6 years ago, cannot rehabilitate here because it's hard to change in your same environment. And you can speak to that. That's what happened to you. So they had to send him totally far away to another state. Not everybody can do that. Not everybody can do that. How do you help? Do you have something to say for somebody to actually change in their same environment? Does everybody have to just fly to another state?
No, I tell kids to ask, it's okay to ask for help, not because you're weak, because you have to remain strong. So asking for help, particularly in the Latino community because of pride, we don't ask for help. But I tell kids it's okay, that was old school, that was then, this is now. So I work a lot with different agencies, like with the Kane County Coroner's Office as an example, right? That's one example of one group that I work with of many. we just got endorsed by the World Boxing Council, and we work with them worldwide. They're in 176 countries. So it's about partnering. It's about collaboration.
Okay. Okay, well, now that you mentioned again the coroner's office, let's go back to the coroner, then we might come back to you. So, Rob Russell, you're the coroner, and you've been in that position since when?
Since December 1st of 2012.
That's a long time.
Yes, 12 years.
Wow. So tell us a little bit of what you accomplished. I know that you mentioned this about taking the coroner's office from laughing stock to preferred stock. I've heard you that. I memorized it myself. But what do you say? What does that? Why do you say that?
Well, I took over an office that was troubled. I'll just put it that way. There were a lot of issues. The previous office holder was under indictment, and he wound up passing away before the end of his term. And, it was a very sad story. But the role of the coroner is to determine the cause and manner of death. And I realized, if you remember nothing else, I always tell people this, remember nothing else. Remember that the coroner's office is an administrative and a law enforcement office. It is not a medical office. So coming from law enforcement, I was a deputy sheriff for 20 years, and on the county level as well. So I understood and knew how to run an organization successfully. That is why I ran. And there were, obviously, when you open up Pandora's box, a lot of different things start to fly out. Some you knew were there and some you didn't. And there were several different things there that I can talk about, not even the least of which was the facilities. We had terrible facilities where we were bringing our county dead. And, the employees were not serviced properly. The families, had to identify their loved ones in a closet, basically. So that was one thing. We had some administrative issues in the sense we weren't paying people properly. They were paid per event rather than by what labor law requires, time and a half after 40. We fixed that. We had a new union contract that was coming in. It had never been union before in the office, and I was not opposed to that. I thought it was something that would be good for the people in the office, and we got that done. And since then, we've had two other working on the third one right now. It was just an office that had good people in it, good workers, good people who cared about other people, and typically the worst day of someone's life here in Kane County. But they needed to be led. They needed to have policies and procedures that made sense to them. And we were able to do that over the last 12 years to the point to where, it was laughing stock, preferred stock. We were the first accredited coroner's office in the state of Illinois. So we were the first one in the state. Since then, we've got 3 others that have become accredited and 5 others that are looking to follow the pattern. So, yeah.
That's amazing. So when you say accredited by who to do what?
Yeah, we were accredited by the International Association of Coroners and Medical Examiners. And what they do is just like any accreditation organization is they put together a bunch of things that any organization needs to come into compliance with. And they write them down and then they audit you and say, are you in compliance with these best practices and standards from across the world, not just the country, but across the world in death investigation. Mm-hmm. And we passed those with 100%.
That's wonderful. Congratulations. I don't know who am I to congratulate you with your experience, but I still say that's a wonderful thing to pass with those accolades. Anyway, so can you tell us a little bit more about exactly how you're involved with people on the day of death? So do you keep track of all the deaths because you have give numbers about how many deaths in Kane County?
Yes.
And then some of them are in the hospital, some of those are in homes, some of them might be like a criminal issue, and some of them are not.
Correct. And depending on the level of death investigation, it's called medical legal death investigation is the name of the profession that we do. And, depending on the level of resources that are needed is dependent on the type of case that it is. Some cases require all stops to be pulled where we have to do autopsy, special toxicology, and whatnot. Vast majority of our deaths are natural deaths. I always say that I have good news and bad news to every organization that I speak at. I say, I have good news and bad news. Which do you want first? They're like, oh, the bad news. Bad news is we're all going to die. We have a universal experience as humans, and we're all born and we all die. The good news is that the vast majority of everyone, and mostly everybody in this room, wherever I'm speaking, will live a long, natural, healthy life and die into their old age, and have many accomplishments. I mean, there are few people, the numbers are actually small, but it happens. It's frequent that people don't have that, where there's car crashes, where there's drug overdoses, where there's homicides, that kind of thing. So those types of cases and incidents require a tremendous amount of administrative funding. And coming into compliance with accreditation allowed the office to not only do that, but also explain and articulate why that's important. So that's why I thought accreditation would solve a lot of the issues, and it has.
Yeah, in a much, much smaller level, but I had to do that at Sherman Hospital, where they originally were using anybody who just had a Spanish last name to interpret, and you had some major problems with that, where people were not trained as medical interpreters. And when I was hired as a first manager of cross-cultural communications, I had to organize a department, and we had sort of some kind of guidelines of what we're going to do. But the first thing I did is go get trained and follow what are the best practices, and then implement those and use any guidelines from legislation,
Sure.
et cetera, to follow those. It makes sense.
Yeah, it's one thing if you say that your office is squared away. It's another thing when a bunch of experts say it.
Right.
I mean, all you have to do is point. You don't think I'm doing what I'm doing? Well, they do.
Yes.
So the other thing I wanted to point out was that the coroner's office, like I said, it is a law enforcement office. It is not a medical office because the medical portions of the office are done by forensic pathologists that I hire. So the reason we hire them is because they have forgotten more about what death investigation, as far as biologically, what that entails than I'll ever know. They have many, many, many years of training, experience. I mean, my forensic pathologist has done thousands of autopsies. I'll never be able to match that, with biologically speaking. So my job is to then take that information, that piece of information, which is the cause of death, the medical cause, because everyone dies of a heart attack, believe it or not, everybody does. There's a reason why the heart stops, though. And that is what the cause is, what the doctors have to determine. Why did that heart stop beating? And then once that heart stops beating, then my job is to determine the manner of death. And the manner, there are only 5. Accidental, natural, homicide, suicide, and one called undetermined, because we may not have enough information to put it in one of those 4 categories. So they've allowed us to have a one called undetermined that we can kind of leave open. If more information comes, we can determine it at that point. This is why it's important that the coroner have a good law enforcement background of investigation rather than medical, because the medical portion is farmed out and done by a doctor.
Right. So even if somebody was elected who was a medical professional of any kind, if they're not a pathologist, they still would have to hire the same person to do that.
That's correct. Even if they were a pathologist, a forensic pathologist, by statute, they cannot do their own autopsies because of separation of powers. That is right in the statute. So it really doesn't matter how much medical training you have, because you still have to hire an outside doctor to do those autopsies by statute.
Now, how do you know if that outside doctor is doing a good job, or how do you ever come into the situation where you say, I don't know, I need a second opinion?
Sure. Well, the first thing is they must be board certified. So that's kind of like an accreditation, board certified forensic pathologist. You can look on the internet. There are many requirements to get to that level, and it's not easy. It takes 10 to 12 years to become a board certified forensic pathologist. Beyond that, it's about, my job as administrator is to look at their past cases and make sure that they were right.
Okay.
So yeah, that's why the administrator portion of my job is important, to hire the right people.
Okay. So now we're running out of time.
Got about 4 minutes,
We have a few minutes, and I have 2 questions. And so one of them is, since we have Dr. Renteria here, I would say, how did you partner with him? This is more of your administrative side, I would say, and human side of just understanding that you want to do some prevention and not just see children or people at the end of their lives, but prevent them from the manner of death.
Yes. Well, one of the jobs, it says in the statutes of the coroner, is to be the conservator of the peace. Now, for the sheriff, that means do programs, do after-school programs, whatever he or she can do to help thwart crime. In my venue, it means basically that whatever I can do to help thwart death. And I have, since the beginning of my term, I've always tried to partner with advocacy groups, whether it be drug-related groups, that fight drug, or whatever it may be, all the different types of deaths, suicide, survivors of suicide, and then bereavement groups and that kind of thing. Well, Dr. Renteria and his group deals with a specific thing dealing with kids. And it's a belief of mine and his as well that nobody should have to bury a child. And to me, it makes a lot of sense. Why would I try to go out and learn everything he's learned and experience everything he's experienced when he's sitting right next to me? And all I have to do is tap into it. It makes complete sense.
So how are you partnering with him? What is the specific thing you are already doing involving his curriculum?
We are giving out the books and curriculum to anybody who wants it. We've given it to the youth home. We've given it to different agencies across Kane County, and we're going to continue to do that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is just networking. When you put a bunch of feathers together, you can get some flight, and that networking is huge in the fact that there's people that have different situations in these different advocacy groups that we can now start moving them towards the appropriate people. So the more people we have, the better. And so it is a more is more, not a less is more thing.
Okay, now, so you're partnering with him and you're giving the books. Who's paying for the books?
Well, I have a special fund that is created through a cremation fund. And so it does not come from the taxpayers. It comes from a special fund in the office that I'm allowed to do, act as the conservator of the peace. And that is how I do it that way. I know that, and plus I also partner with him with other groups and talk to him about other groups that have also bought some books. So it's not just the coroner's office, but many other agencies as well.
Yeah.
Okay, any parting words that either one of you would want to share since we're running out of time?
I just like to say that it's my goal to put the coroner's office out of business. Nobody should have to bury a child.
Okay, well.
I agree.
Very
I agree.
good.
I'd gladly give up my post if that were the case.
Well, you can't fully be out of business because everybody is going to die
Everybody
eventually.
dies,
But at
yeah.
least when it comes to young deaths of youngs or deaths from drug-related or
Yes.
crime.
Absolutely.
Yes. Very good. Any questions or anything we missed
Well,
that you would like to ask?
I just want to make sure everybody knows how to reach all of you. Thank you, Sylvia, for putting this together today. It is Silvia for Kane.com. It's SILVIA for Kane.com. Running for Kane County Board District 20. And Dr. Robert Renteria is at FromTheBarrio.com to find out more about you. And running for Kane County Coroner once again is Rob Russell at Russell4Coroner.com. So thanks for your time today, everybody.
Thank you. If anybody would like books, please contact me.
And this will be on YouTube at WRMN Radio on YouTube. It's the WRMN Kane County District 20 panel. Stay tuned.
It's the time of the year where storms and inclement weather can pop up unexpectedly. If you have a generator powered by a small engine, keep it running like a top. Don't do the tune-up yourself. Let Ames Small Engine Repair
I think so.
at 674
I think you took
Laurel
over. I was
Street in
hoping you
Elgin.
would.